We're living live.
We're living live largely, and we're learning. Um, Today, our topic is to ultimately know ourselves as low consciousness.
And we have to pause for a moment on the sort of the title of today's discussion. It's so just in the may be getting a little lost as it is literally intended to be understood. So
Yeah, it's getting used a lot. It's getting used a lot, and
so
really, we're here to address the illusion of, I like this as a subtitle, to address the illusion of all things time.
say it again.
We're here to address the illusion of all things time, like, hey, got the time? Well, first we'd have to have time to have the time, but we'll talk about that another time.
And if you're a part of our community, more than likely you've traversed quantum physics and you've traversed our favorite wonderful associates like Nassim, Herman, and many others. So you're already tuned to, again, just the idea that time is an illusion. And you're agreeing more than likely with the scientific at this point recognition. Scientists put forward a belief and they say we've proven it and we're all there, but no one is living the reality of this that they are sort of agreeing that they understand. And so we do want to dive into this to address the illusion of all things time. And one of the ways we thought might be so fascinating to do this is to first consider, and if you've got notes and you're going to take some notes, we want you to write down the expression of something that is everlasting versus something that is eternal, everlasting or eternity. And we tapped into a beautiful conversation between some of Rupert Spira's students and Rupert, and they were on this sort of excellent conversation that I think is the pathway that we're going to use for this presentation today on to ultimately know ourselves as a single consciousness. So let's dive in with the first premise here. The question is the I am a portal through which the eternal or eternity comes into time itself, right? At the time that we are in a meditation or we have done what we'll call some of the beautiful spiritual paraphernalia work that, brings about consciousness through the mind. There is this I am understanding. And there we are sort of in this portal gateway often, through which maybe eternity is there, but we're still in time, right? We're still in a continuum of a time-space experience.
So the concept of I am as being a portal is thought of as the portal through which eternity comes into time. And so what we really want to look at is in awareness's experience of itself. Okay, so let me say that again. In awareness's experience of itself, there is no knowledge of time prior to when the mind arises, prior to thought, prior to perception. In other words, prior to the arising of thought and perception, there's no experience of time. A perfect example of that that Rupert uses is the concept of deep sleep. In other words, to simplify this, no mind, no time. And after a deep sleep, as soon as the mind arises again in the morning,
or in the nighttime, You're getting
That's
up.
true. As soon as the mind arises, whenever time seems to exist once more. So, for awareness prior to the mind, there is no time.
And let's go one little step further into the conversation. When awareness assumes the form or activity of the mind, awareness itself seems to appear as time. And let's really dive into that. Awareness assumes the form or the activity of the mind, meaning I am, that precedes I am, we are going to suggest is ultimately the place where we know ourselves as single consciousness. And that's a lot to digest. Write that down. Where we know ourselves as a single consciousness is where awareness assumes the form of the activity of the mind, or prior to awareness assuming the form of the activity of the mind. So awareness itself appears as time. How does awareness appear in the form of the mind? That's what we want to look at.
Well, by localizing itself. Each of us is a localization of awareness. I am one, Jillian is one, you are one. So, whereby awareness itself in its natural state and form is without boundary, let's say, border delineation, it's non-local. We are localizations of awareness, and it's through this localization that thinking and perceiving take place. Um, Really, we could say, so if we, as this localization, this separate self, if we investigate our primary experience, then we come into the experience of the I am.
The investigation. And you've heard us say, even I think last week, explore the expression of something that is happening. I was just ironically in a I am tired, right? Or I am excited, or I am depressed, whatever that is. And we explored the idea of taking the subject of the I am and allowing it to move out of the foreground, because when we're in the expression of what an activity or an experience I am is just a flyby. The activity has taken the emphasis. The activity is the expression of where the thinking mind, the brain, the biology of the body is headed. So we explored the idea of taking that activity into the background and allowing this I am to move into the foreground. And so that's why we're saying that perhaps the portal, I am is this little portal. It's the first experience that consciousness has, either leaving or returning, either leaving time or the everlasting and entering into eternity, or the reverse.
So it's a two-way portal. It's a two-way doorway. The way Rupert describes it is that it's the last experience that the separate self, the localization, has when we're returning to the non-localized form, returning to our true nature. But it's the first experience consciousness has, or awareness has, on its way to becoming finite, localized, or even the finite mind.
Shall we share the example of the prisoner?
I
This is
I
sort of
don't
an
love
extremist
this example. Yes,
but it's a way to think about it. It's a context. So, like a prison door, where on one side, let's assume someone has done something in life that requires
they go to prison.
Yeah.
So on one side of the door, it says
Bondage.
Bondage on your way in. On the other side, on your way out, it says freedom. So it's just really which way you're headed.
Right.
I
And
hate
that
that
isn't,
example. I don't want to use it.
well, it
But
is
it
a
makes sense. Yeah.
localization where, and in the localization, what don't we have? In the localization, meaning we are the separate self, we don't have direct access to the ultimate freedom. And let's just come right back to it, to ultimately know ourselves as a single consciousness. So that's really what we're saying when we're talking about freedom. We're not talking about a less than wonderful life. We're talking about a wonderful life that isn't inclusive of the ultimate knowingness of a single consciousness. It's just,
Right.
it
It's
is
it's 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 limitation in an aspect versus limitless.
right. So just by furthering this exploration, let's talk a little bit about the
It's
portal.
right. And the portal really, this portal is, well, let's just say that the I am consciousness through this portal is limiting itself as the finite mind, and consciousness in theirs is what seems to lose its freedom and regain its freedom.
And just think about having a really impactful, mind filled, not mindfulness, but mind filled day, and hitting your cozy, comfortable bed. And before you know it, falling into sleep, right? The mind goes to sleep. You have a freedom there. The activity of all that has been finite in your experience as the subject of your experience is no longer aware. You are no longer aware of your thoughts. That has nothing to do with your dreams. Dreaming is another level, it's a different conversation, it is an activity of the mind, but there is no thinking
Right.
when we are in um, the sleeping
And an
activity.
amazing freedom when we're in it, which is why I like
Oh yeah,
when Rupert mentioned
Krishnamurti's.
Krishnamurti's quote. One of his last books was called "The First and Last Freedom," and to quote from it, it says, "What is the last freedom for consciousness in one direction is the first freedom for the individual in the other."
Direction.
Well, right.
So, but it's an important statement. Let's write this down. If you're taking notes, it is a self-investigatory quote, and important because when we look at the activity of energy, light, and information, its intersection with us receiving, there is an aspect of this that are you coming back?
I am. I'm just
See,
finding
I
a
am
nice
coming
place.
back.
I am. But I'm focused on the I am.
So
Right,
what
as much
is
as I was focused on the I am, putting my juice glass down carefully so I don't kick it over.
what is the last freedom for consciousness in one direction is the first freedom for the individual, the separate self, in the other direction, and reverse. So just let's take that in as we look at the idea of eternity is a beingness, right? Everlasting, something that is everlasting is still confined by time. So pure being is eternity. Prior to the arising of existence, pure being is in eternity. When being assumes the form of existence, then time and space appear. And that's exactly what we talked about. Existori. Eric gave you the Latin definition of that a few weeks ago when we were looking at something that is illusion or real in a way or non-existent. So we looked at existence. Let me just say that again. When being assumes the form of existence, then time and space appear. So everything that exists, right, is part of time and space. Leads us to
Right.
what?
It leads us
The
to,
beginning.
but then we have to look at,
Wait,
right. Then we have to look at, there is no time. Or, as Rupert says, there is no time, period, which of course makes me smile because it also sounds like there's no time period. But there is no time, period. And
but
go ahead.
do you subscribe to that or don't you? if you are following avidly,
What's going on
again,
in quantum physics and
okay,
science today?
you need to grasp not just, hey, time doesn't exist, therefore I am. Like, this is,
It's not just cool and groovy.
what
It's
does
science
this
backed.
mean? And what is yourself investing around?
Right.
There is no time.
So the question that River poses is, have you ever been to the past?
Have you ever been to the past?
Have you ever been to the past? And the initial response, and by the way, greetings to all you YouTubers. So have you ever been to the past?
Oh, well, if they're
And
if they're sneak peeky YouTubers, they're going to have to wait to hear the answer.
right. But what I'm going to say is your initial response might be, sure, I have, in my thoughts. And how we would respond to that response, you're going to find out when you do join us, because Rupert had some very interesting takes on it.
So we hope to see you YouTube sneak peekers in our RLC community soon. This is just unfolding, and we're really enjoying it. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
So again, have you ever been to the past? I think is a brilliant question. Sit there, take a moment to think about that. And you think of the past, but you think of the past as now.
Well, you think of the past sometimes as being in the past. You know, I'm thinking of the past, so here I am in the past. But really,
what is that really called, though? In plain words, a memory.
Yeah. So you think of the past now. You can't think of the past yesterday, or that would have been thought of. You know, you thought of the past. When you think of the past, you're not in the past. You're thinking of it now. So you're in the now. So the question then becomes, have you ever actually been to that place we call the past, that place that you're thinking about? Have you ever
has anybody
even for a moment stepped out of the now, even for a second, to go to that place we call the past or the future, whatever, and then come back to tell us about it?
Could anybody ever go there?
Yeah. Has anybody? Could anybody? And as Rupert says, don't you think if the past really existed, that someone for at least one moment would have gone there?
Currently, so far, that must be the test of the existence of the past. We have to experience it. Really, what other test could there be? And I'm going to go all the way out there. That's just scientific. That's what scientists do. They make up a theory, the theory of the past, and then they test it. Is it actually there? Can we find it? So
actually, Terry says, when I think of the past, I sigh at myself and I say, why am I doing that? And that helps me leap back into the now, or the thinking of the now that we've never actually quite left. So it's kind of intriguing.
And let's let Terry pause on that. Is there a now? What is now? Now, you know? So again, even now is an aspect of time.
Terry Larkin says, pure being assumes there is no time, correct? And Miriam says, the illusion of time is not easy to grasp.
No.
There is always only the now.
And even the now is not entirely graspable in the form of no time. But we can get close. And that's part of the discussion. Part of this discussion is to look at the very title that we're on here, which is how, and I'm putting it into a question, how to ultimately know ourselves as a single consciousness. And we're going to suggest that the only possibility is through the portal of this I am. And even then, I am is still an aspect of the experience we are having connected to time. Let's let's keep going.
But before we do, first, hang here for 1 second, because Terry says something I think might be important to touch on for a moment, which is if we take the I am as a dive into infinity, let's say in meditation,